Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Thanks indeed for investing your time with us. It's still the program this morning on ITV. It's now time for us to talk about aviation. The aviation industry across the world never had it very good at the weekend. Sometimes when you keep cruising in the air, taking off and landing safely here, and passengers are boarding or disembarking, you don't know what is going good for you until the one we saw at the weekend when that passenger plane crashed, I think in a farm settlement here, killing all 111 persons on board. Somehow, not too good one there for the world. Many persons felt very bitter. Their family, loved ones, besieging airports, and when it was fully confirmed that nothing else could be done here, that they've all been killed in that crash, everyone just had to sit down, whip through the weekend here, and many keep talking about safety. Well, it's time for us to talk about aviation this morning, and we have with us aviation freak, Mr. Godwin Ike. The detail is on the screen there. You can see it. Most time we put that here so that we don't end up becoming more like a dialogue or a monologue, but we are wanting to have an in-depth mass communication system where you who are watching us here can also be involved in viewers' participation here. That's Mr. Godwin N. Ike. The phone number is on the screen. The email, should you want to send mail, goddyike@yahoo.com here. The website to check, follow through what he's doing is also there. The YouTube channel, Aviation Freaks .official is there. Twitter handle for you to tweet, discuss with him at Aviation Freaks here. That's the detail of the man who have found so much interest in aviation as against what he took time to study, which is estate surveyor at school. I'm valuer here, but now he's just deep into aviation here, studying, and is also globally being acknowledged for the interest and the passion he's having when it comes to surveyor. Like biblical Apostle Paul, who studied law under Gamaliel, became a tent maker and become one of the greatest of all the apostles over time here. A very wonderful morning.
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the program. We thank God the weekend was fine, but not for the aviation industry.
I understand that. I had a wonderful weekend anyway, as always. Like I always tell anyone that listens to me, airplanes are always faithful. They're faithful machines. Unfortunately, human operators can be unfaithful and extremely dishonest. And that's why planes follow the skies. Here again, another sad incident. The one that happened in Havana, Cuba. That crash had absolutely no business, taking place. Had human operators responded to the many cries of that airplane, the plane was said to have cried and cried and cried.
But why the plane was crying? What the other two pilots said yesterday, Sunday morning, was that the plane was still flying, but the plane was saying, "Look, I'm not good." But was still flying.
Oh, that's the unfaithfulness of human operators. I always say it, and I mean every word of it. Airplanes are extremely faithful machines. They are built so well, it's unbelievable. As a matter of fact, an average airplane is loaded with thousands of sensors that monitor every inch of the airplane. And parameters are already set in the computers. If anything, is falling out of place, the particular sensor designated to monitor that part of the airplane immediately reports to the operators, "Hey, something is wrong here, it needs to be fixed." And as soon as engineers get in there, put in their computers, you can pin your finger on the exact thing that is wrong. You're just required to take it out, have it replaced, and that's the end of the thing, and the airplane will never let you down. But what do you find? When the airplane makes such a report, it's probably required something that will cost a couple of millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase. The corrupt, unfaithful, and dishonest human operators would ignore and say to themselves, "Oh, we can do we can do some more hours with this. Let's
do
see
some more months.
And yes, let's see if we can rake in some more money." And of course, the business of aviation is not a business where you rake in. I mean, I'm talking about commercial aviation right now. It's not a business of when you're taking all the money and you begin to fritter them away, living luxurious life and buying up and shifting money to. If you want to run an airline successfully, and this is for those who are still out there running in Nigeria, the gross takings you make, that is to say your ticket sales, your fines, whatever money that you rake in the business of the operation of the airline, minimum of 40% gross. 40% gross must be put away as money that you don't own. You don't touch it because that airplane will need it someday. And so if we were to run our airline industries responsibly by putting away those those monies, when the airplane needs it, you spend it and keep the airplane running. Aviation is profitable. If you want to find out how profitable, find out from UAE, the Emirates. Find out from Kenyan Airways. Find out for Qatar. Find out for the South African Airways. Find out from Ethiopian Airlines. Find out from BA. I mean, the retinue of airlines are there.
Sadly, no Nigerian Airways.
Well,
sadly, very sadly. We've called the world, but we are not there.
We've
called the world.
Yes, that's correct. That of Nigeria Airways bleeds my heart. I did a comprehensive work on it. The rise and fall of Nigeria Airways. Maybe one of these days we're going to repeat the series on this program and let Nigerians see how we, not anyone else.
How we missed it.
We Nigerians, how we killed Nigeria Airways and it died and got buried. And up until today, we are suffering from this. Aviation business is profitable. The reason airlines are closing down is because of extreme selfishness, irresponsibility, and corruption. That's all. That's what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. And then the Cuban thing. The airplane announced severally that it should be checked. No one did anything until it slaughtered 111 people. Over the
but who should have?
weekend.
Who should have? When you think we need to have like a reporting system here? When a pilot observes something and it tells you, because the two pilots who spoke yesterday morning in Cuba said, look, we told the airline operators, we worked there before we retired, that this plane, we flew this plane, and at the time we retired, the plane was already giving us signs that, hey guys, you need to work on me, maybe a D check or whatever here. But they never did that. And all of a sudden, the plane kept flying until the day the plane crashed here. These two pilots never told anybody. They only reported to the airline operators. And when the plane crashed, they told the press and the world.
Yeah, you see, it's all about ethics. By reporting to the authorities, it's just like, for instance, in Nigeria, if you knew anything that should be reported concerning any particular airplane, the organization to talk to is NCAA, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. They are saddled with the security and the maintenance and the rest of them, and they are supposed to be inspecting those airplanes regularly. And if they find anything wrong, their business is to ground the airplane and ensure that it doesn't take to the skies until that problem is resolved. Here again, do they always ground them when they should? The answer is probably no. Occasionally, you find people compromising and in exchange for money, and and at the end of the day, people's lives are put at risk. Sometimes, again, you find daredevil pilots who know really pretty well. For instance, recall the Dana air crash of 3rd of June of 2012, isn't it? 14 minutes into that flight, the plane announced that something was wrong. Even the pilot, when he got a call from his first officer about, about the reading of the engine ratio, knew something was wrong. The power input was not equal to the, the response of the engine, and the plane announced it. And what did the pilot say? An indication that he knew something was wrong. All he should have done 14 minutes into that flight, and he had
to return back,
make it 180 degrees and all the way back, with due permission from the control tower, and he would have been given clearance and preference to, for landing, and he would have touched down safely. All those passengers
were slaughtered.
All those passengers were unnecessarily slaughtered. Most probably would have all been alive today. Most probably, it's only God that can tell, the end of it all. But most probably, all of them would have been alive today if only that pilot had been faithful and honest. He should have brought them back, and he should have been able to land safely. But he went on selfishly, because his mission on that day was that he was doing his last flight in Nigeria and had a flight to catch in Lagos to return to the United States of America. And then, selfishly, he didn't want to pay another airline to take him to Lagos if he had returned to Abuja, because he would have had to buy tickets from another airline, or maybe if they had another flight of their own, join one other, No, all his decision was, a selfish one. I must get to Lagos. I must get to Lagos. And then must get to Lagos, he never made it. Few minutes to Lagos, he crashed and slaughtered people unnecessarily. That's what happens all the time. Otherwise, this awesome machine is faithful.
Okay, let's take our touch for today quickly. Daredevil pilot, what are we looking at today?
Oh, we're looking at the Eastern Airlines Flight 212 crash. There again, you're going to see some daredevil pilots that did what they shouldn't, and then ended up, crashing and slaughtering people unnecessarily. It will be the last of the daredevil. Remember, what we're trying to achieve here is to get our own, operators understand that they can operate more responsibly and safely, and then keep the skies in Nigeria safe and nice, and a speaker Spanish should be. That's what this whole, the essence of this whole effort that we're making here at And so, as soon as we're done with this, next week again we deal with something that is a fallout from this particular crash, known as sterile cockpit rule. Sterile cockpit rule. We're going to see it and then deal with it next week, and then move into some brand new.
Okay, let's kick off.
So clip one, please. Clip one.
Aviation daredevil pilot engaging in non-patent cockpit cockpit conversion during approach phase of flight.
The crash of Eastern Airlines Flight 212. You can see from the title, engaging in non-pertinent cockpit conversations.
What does that mean?
During your final approach, it's a serious period in flying when you're coming in to land. What happens is the man in control, it could be the captain in control of the controls who's doing the flying. It could be his first officer, who's usually on the right, part of the cockpit. The captain sits on the left. But everything is so synchronized that whatever happens on the captain's side is simultaneously happening on the co-pilot side. So you can actually fly the airplane from either side. So anyone can be in control. So but when one is in control, the other is making calls for him. And so during the final approach, it's a serious time and serious concentration required. The man in control is holding his joystick.
You know for sure that the time that travelers fear most is landing and takeoff.
Of course. Yes. So the man that's flying is holding his joystick, keeping his eye on the windshield, and making sure that he's aligned with the runway right ahead of him, and then descending according to the provision of the glide slope, especially if you're flying with the instrument regime. Now your Your co-pilot is supposed to be giving you calls because he will keep his eyes on the panel, cockpit panel, and taking readings of the altimeter, so that you make sure that you're keeping your glide in order to touch down on the threshold of the runway. But see what happens sometimes when pilots make themselves chatterboxes and they begin to tell tales about their girlfriends, tell tales about business, and then they are enjoying their conversation. They lose concentration. The man who should even make calls for his colleague is not even taking a look. They are busy just descending. Now, the consequence of this is sometimes they fly into the terrain, what they call controlled flight into the terrain. Because as you're coming, especially at night, and in periods of bad weather, when only the instruments...
Sometimes they presume they know it already.
Yes. And then when the instruments are the only ones that can give you the parameters and give you your position awareness, and so that you don't ditch yourself before the end of the runway. So that's why this particular one we're going to be dealing with today, brought about the world developing the sterile cockpit rule. Okay. That's to say, a time that pilots must shut up. Don't discuss anything other than that flight so that you land safely. So let's move on. September 11th, that's clip 1. 1974 was a day the United States of America lost 72 of its citizens in an unnecessary air crash. It was a Wednesday and early morning. Eastern Airlines Flight 212 was a Douglas DC 931 passenger flight carrying 78 passengers and 4 crew operating a scheduled flight within USA from Charleston, South Carolina to Chicago, Illinois. On that early Wednesday morning, while conducting an instrument approach, you heard that? An instrument approach as against visual approach, where you have to be looking out for landmarks and beacons and the rest of them. But for instrument approach, you're not seeing anything other than watching your instrument and guided by the parameters on the instrument. Okay, here we go. On that early morning, Wednesday morning, while conducting an instrument approach in dense ground fog into Douglas Municipal Airport in Charlotte, the aircraft crashed about 3 miles, approximately 5 kilometers, short of runway 36, killing 72 of the 82 on board. Okay, clip 2, please. Here we go, Atta.
That's clip 2.
Yes, investigation of the crash by the National Transportation Safety Board, that's an American body, the NTSB. Okay, the United States National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, on May 23, 1975, released its findings after a painstaking and thorough investigation of the cause of the crash. The NTSB concluded that the accident was caused by the flight crew's lack of altitude awareness and poor cockpit discipline. They were not aware of their altitude. They were just busy chattering and discussing about used cars business and the rest of it. I mean, those things came out, from the cockpit voice recorder.
From the black box.
Yes, from the black boxes after the accident. And so, during the review of the cockpit voice recorder, the NTSB found that the flight crew engaged in unnecessary and non-pertinent conversation during the final approach phase of the flight, discussing subjects ranging from politics to used cars deals. Pilots coming into land talking politics and used car deals. And they lost concentration.
Correct.
Yeah. So the NTSB concluded that conducting such non-essential chatter can distract pilots from their flying duties during the critical phases of flight, especially during instrument approach to landing. Because in instrument approach to landing, as one is in control, the other is making calls. For instance, if you're now coming finally and you started, another range of descent from say 500 feet above sea level, or depending on whether you're using the flight, flight level or the altitude. I'm going to explain all those to you because they are different things. Then as one is flying, the other is giving calls, 500 feet, and he's looking at the altimeter, 400, and the one that's flying is making sure that he's keeping to what's going on, 300, 200, 100, and then 50, you're ready to touch down. And then the one that's flying looks out and makes sure that he is looking at those white lines. That's the threshold of the runway for a nice slide pull up to get your nose a little up and then let go for your undercarriages to touch down. That's the way it works, Arthur.
And not some guys doing something strange and just discussing politics.
As soon as you lose your awareness of your altitude, you're finished. Before you know it, you just control the airplane into the terrain and crash. And that's what happened in this case. Let's move to clip 3 very quickly. And so that clip 3, we have just 4 clips to go, so that as soon as time chases us away from this studio, we will gladly run away.
The waste of
right, the waste of irreplaceable and precious lives when unnecessary air crashes take place. Among those who lost their lives in the Eastern Airlines Flight 212 crash were the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the Medical University of South Carolina, James William Colbert Jr. This man, great guy, lost his life in that unnecessary crash. The father of comedian Stephen Colbert, and 2 of his sons. The 2 of his sons died along with him in that unnecessary crash. Also lost in that unnecessary crash was Rear Admiral Charles Cummins, acting commandant of the 6th Naval District. Now, look at the carnage. That photograph is showing you the carnage. What was left of that Flight 212, Eastern Airlines. And they had people slaughtered because of irresponsible and indisciplined conduct of pilots in the cockpit. Now, clip 4, finally. Further findings and conclusions by the NTSB. Further findings and conclusion of NTSB on the possible cause of the crash was that the pilots were apparently trying to visually locate the Charlotte airport while executing an instrument approach. Very funny. You're executing an instrument approach and yet you are busy looking out for some tower, some landmark whose elevations were already known, and it was foggy. And there was a kind of a ground, fog that hit all the way to the ground, so there was nothing to see. And those men were busy chatting and not looking at the instruments, and they were executing instrument approach, landing. And they were busy chatting away, hoping to see the tower, that would tell them, oh, okay, from this tower now, we are 300 feet above the sea level, so that's good enough. Let's head out and get to the runway. It was silly. That's what they did. But listen, Arthur, let's conclude this very quickly. Now, further findings and conclusion of the NTSB on the possible cause of the crash was that the pilots were apparently trying to visually locate the Charlotte airport while executing an instrument approach in the presence of low-lying fog. The flight crew was also suspected to have been distracted and confused by their persistent bid to visually identify the nearby Carowinds amusement park tower, fondly known amongst pilots as Carowinds Tower. The first officer co-pilot was operating the flight controls, and none of the required altitude callouts were made by the captain, an indication that both pilots, although executing an instrument approach, were rather busy looking out for the Carowinds Tower elevation, which was generally known to be.
That means they've been able to, over time, use that tower as a landmark.
That's correct.
They used to it, they love it. Anytime they are getting there, okay, look, we've seen the tower, then we are from this point to this point, we are about. They can easily use that one as a landmark. Like in Abuja, somebody tells you, look, I'm in Banex. Then right. You know, okay, from Banex to Secretariat, I give you 6 minutes.
That's
you
correct.
should be there in 6 minutes time. So everyone is going there, you want to check for Banex and all of that.
I'm amazed. I'm amazed at you. The rate at which you understand this aviation stuff, I think you're going to go for your PPL. Your pilot's private license very, very quickly.
You go ahead first, I'm coming behind.
Oh, well, okay, that's fine. So the first officer was operating the flight controls, and none of the required, okay, we've done that now. An indication that both pilots, although executing an instrument approach, were rather busy looking out for the Carowinds Tower elevation, which was generally known to be 1,314 feet. That's about 401 meters, that's in altitude, or 340 feet, that is 105 meters above ground level, AGL. I'm going to explain that quickly as soon as I run through this last clip, so you understand the difference between, talking about the pressure measured altitude and the other one, that is the AGL, which is normally called flight level in aviation. I'm going to explain that quickly before we are chased away from this video. This situation compounded the pilot's total lack of altitude awareness. Their altitude awareness got eroded when they were busy looking out for the tower that had been covered by fog. All right. They ended up controlling the flight into the terrain. About
Which terrain?
The ground is
not the wrong way.
Not the wrong way. The ground filled with trees, shrubs, and all sorts. Because as they were busy looking out for the tower that they wouldn't see, they didn't know that we're already very close to the ground. And they were still believing that having not seen the tower,
somewhere beneath.
Yeah, having not seen the tower, they were still about 400 meters above. But they had gone way below the tower because the tower was covered by fog and they didn't see it, and they were executing an instrument approach that they should have minded the cockpit instruments and then minded their glide slope, onboard glide slope, and that would have taken them nicely to the, but they were more interested in their politics talk and used cars distortions, and then believing that they could ignore the instruments, and then as soon as we see the tower, we're fine. Well, they never saw the tower until
they saw
everything was crashing down, and they just realized that they had goofed, and they were doomed. All right. So, concluding now. This situation compounded the pilot's total lack of altitude awareness. They ended up controlling the flight into the terrain about 5 kilometers before the runway. Daredevil pilots, weren't they? Daredevil pilots, weren't they? They were, of course. All right. So let me explain something very quickly that often confuses people when they hear them. We talked about the altitude as against the flight level. Now, the instrument that measures that is the altimeter that measures altitude in the airplane. Is dependent on the change of atmospheric pressure. Remember, when we're sitting here, the atmospheric pressure here is high. That is making it possible for us. The awesome God created it in such a way that we can breathe in and out. Helps the lungs and everything. That's what the Creator made here. But as you soar into the skies, atmospheric pressure thins out. It reduces until you get to the space where it doesn't even exist at all, and that's that's when
you're out of gravity.
Yes, that's why no gravity and everything is just floating in limbo. Okay, now what the altimeter measures the difference in atmospheric pressure as you are rising and coming down, and then denominates them into feet above, sea level. That's what your altimeter does for you. But here is the trick. Airports are built in different locations with different elevations. For instance, Abuja Airport elevation is not the same as Enugu elevation.
The one in Jos is high.
That's correct.
I know, I observed that one. That one is very high. So
very high elevation. Now, the trick is this. If you depend on your altimeter, which you had set with the elevation from the airport you took off from.
To be Abuja to Jos.
That's correct. The likelihood is that if your altimeter is reading, say for instance, 300 feet above sea level, and you have been asked to maintain that 300, and somebody else who has just taken off is being asked to attain 500 in order to vertically separate the two airplanes, the likelihood is that that 300 may be in reality 500. But it is reading 300 in the cockpit. But in reality,
500.
You are occupying 500. What does it now show you?
A likely head-on collision.
A head-on, a crash.
A crash.
And in truth, the pilot is looking at 300 feet above sea level in his equipment. The other one is looking at 500. But in reality, both of them are at 500 because of the elevation of the... So, those who are thinking for us on daily basis, designing how we can keep ourselves safe, that came up with flight levels. So as you're now approaching an airport, those in the control tower will rather give you the flight level you're going to keep as you're approaching, because that's more precise for that elevation of the area.
I get you very precisely.
You get the point.
I get you clearly.
So that's why you saw,
okay.
Yeah.
We said we'll be looking at what for next week.
We're going to be looking at sterile cockpit rule.
Okay.
You see, after this crash, the NTSB came up with a rule they call the sterile cockpit rule, which gave a set of instructions.
Okay, let's. You will keep that. You will keep that now, so that. But next week Monday, when you join us at 8 a.m., we'll be taking you through that period here. We've been through with the Daredevil pilot. Those who oftentimes break rules. It's good to break rules when you're going to change system here, but not to break rules when you're going to be very naughty and make organization and make things not work here. The Daredevil pilot took some risks. They went beyond the boundaries here, and what they got was disaster, like the one we just showed you now. A man who ought to just be focused, concentrating, and looking at what he's doing here. Someone was talking about some things, and his cerebral hemisphere got disorganized. He lost concentration, lost focus, and next thing, those who we are thinking of being welcomed by loved ones found themselves being pushed closer and dumped in the grave. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you very much. It's my pleasure all the time.
We wish you all the very best of the week. Thanks. Okay, we'll take a break. When we return from the break here, we will be discussing and, if possible, getting you involved to know what was your opinion and your view when it comes to defection by politicians here. Yesterday, we saw former Osun State Deputy Governor Onyela Misore abandoning the PDP and running to the SDP. As far as he's concerned now, he wants to save Osun State, and the only place he can save the state is the SDP, because the PDP is not a place where he can stay and save. We've seen some persons left the PDP for the APC on the ground that they cannot work under the umbrella, that the broom is nice to carry. We've seen some say, look, the APC broom is shattered. The bond that holds the broom beneath it here, that rubber band here is already scattered here. They need to go back to the umbrella so that they will not be beaten by the rain of poverty. Every reason given by everyone here on the need why they must defect. After this break.